obviously now when you're going back home, are you going back straight to Berlin first, sorry, or are you going to go back to Helsinki? Sorry.
No, we're actually going to Helsinki. So, and that will be our home base. So we'll live in Helsinki. I've spent maybe about 5, 6 months in total of my life in Helsinki, I would say so
Mm,
far, sort of like visiting family, friends, spending like a week here and there. I think longest maybe I've been consecutively was maybe 2 months, 2.5 months. So yeah, no, we're moving to Helsinki, and it's going to be very different from Hong Kong, right? Helsinki is a relatively small city. It has 500,000 inhabitants. If you
mm.
take like the greater Helsinki area, it's about 1 million. So there's
And
like
you
these big
compare that to
places.
Berlin, and what's the population in Berlin?
I think Berlin is like 3.4 million or so. So yeah,
And Hong
it's
Kong's about, what's Hong Kong nowadays?
I think 7.5 if you like
Wow.
include all
So
the new territories and so
three and a
yeah.
half Berlin, 7 million Hong Kong COVID, 500,000 Helsinki.
Yeah, yeah.
And Nicholas, originally, where are you from, Nicholas? Sorry?
I'm originally from Germany, from Cologne in the west of Germany,
Hmm.
and yeah, I came to Berlin for that, well, that first job at Freshworks we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's been about like, yeah, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 years in Berlin before now coming here.
Wow, it's a bit of a journey, obviously, eh? It's going to be a
Yeah,
huge contrast between, Berlin, Hong Kong, Helsinki, eh?
I think any place in Europe, right? Like Hong Kong, I think it's also funny how quickly you get used to just the immense scale of things, right? Like there's like
Hmm.
not that many buildings, I think, in Germany, which are more than 20 floors, right? And now it's
Really?
very normal to sort of like live in a place like we live in on a 31st floor. And it's just like we got so used to that, right? Like everything is super big. And I remember, I mean, Cologne is by German standards, Cologne is not a small city. Cologne also has like 1 million people. And then you come to Berlin and you feel, oh, Berlin is so big, right? And now here in Hong Kong, I mean, obviously, like Hong Kong is at the upper end, right? I'm not sure what's
So everything's
even
all
more
built up.
crazy. Yeah, it's not much behind Hong Kong, but yeah, no, it's funny how quickly you get used to things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, if we then parlay it back to Helsinki, buildings are probably what? Like I've been to Helsinki doing my honeymoon, and it's a lovely place. I could, I'm not saying Helsinki is a place to retire to, but I could see myself living my days in Helsinki because it's peace and quiet. It's lovely. It's not much people. So, what's the plan in Helsinki?
That exactly, I guess. It's gonna be more quiet for sure. But
Yep.
I think there's almost intent, right? I feel you just gotta embrace what's sort of like what's special about a certain place. So what we're, for example, doing in Helsinki is we'll live much closer to nature. We
Oh, that's
just
brilliant.
sort of like from here ordered a kayak because we want to pick up some kayak and water sports because Helsinki is right next to the water. There's something like you couldn't, I mean, in theory you could do in Hong Kong, but like you have only yacht clubs, and it's like extremely expensive, right? But it was one of the things, at least in Berlin, which we missed, that it was always such a chore to sort of like go out in the nature, sort of like around Berlin. We didn't have a car in Berlin. So that's a lot of work, and you don't end up doing that too often, right? You go to a park within the city, but it's not the same as really being outside in nature. Maybe it's also, for me, I grew up in the outskirts of Cologne. So maybe that's my ideal living environment in that sense, right? That
Interesting.
you have access to a city, you can go there 20, 30 minutes and you're in the city center, but you can also go for a run and you are actually in a proper forest and not just in a park inside a city. And that is something which we're looking forward to for Helsinki because it's yeah, it's just that much closer to nature. And yeah, I think that you just got to embrace, right? You can't compare it with Hong Kong. You can't compare the
Yeah.
nightlife or the food. I think it's one of the things we really enjoy in Hong Kong. I think it's going to be very different in that regard, but it's going to have its own sort of like size, and you just got to embrace that.
Fantastic. Well said. So you're very much going to be embracing what Helsinki can offer. You make a good point. You really can't compare apples to apples, so to speak, because every sort of city has its own sort of uniqueness. So for yourself, It seems Helsinki is very much a city that suits your personality and your way of life.
Yeah, I think this is at least a it's a right city for like the next phase in life. I mean, every city is like very multifaceted, right? I think
Mm.
it's a little bit uh, there's not that one Helsinki, but at the same time, of course, like Finland has a very distinct sort of like culture and way of living. It's something I'm looking forward to, and I haven't like as I said before, so I've been with my wife now for more than 9 years and
Wow.
never picked up learning Finnish because it's an extremely difficult language. I was always making grand promises in the beginning. Yeah, no problem, I learn it.
You
That's one
you
of the
have to
things I
now.
really want to. I have to do now.
You got no
And I
choice.
was saying, yeah, I said, yeah, I would refer back to it, sort of say, no, I need to move to like Finland to actually like have the language all around you. And
Mm.
I mean, I really believe that. But now the work starts, so yeah.
You mentioned the people in Finland, they have a certain way of life. What do you mean like that?
I mean, Finland in all these studies is like one like happiness studies. Finland would usually be one of the happiest countries in the world, or the happiest country in the world. And I think it's related to the people there. I feel people are in general quite content with what they have.
Yeah, why is that?
Maybe
I see it a lot with sort of the Scandinavian nations, right? But now I'm talking to someone who's lived in Sweden. I mean, sorry, lived in Helsinki. Wife is Finnish, so you know it all in a way.
yeah, I'm not sure if I know it all yet. I hope to find it out
Mm.
moving there, but mm, it has a lot of good things going for itself. I think Finland, but also Scandinavian countries, right? Broadly, it has really good education, some of the best education systems in the world, right? Get good healthcare. You have sort of like taken care of by the state, and you have a very sort of like egalitarian society in the sense that I think there's people don't have like the same sort of like polarization you have in like a few other places. I think, of course, you have some tendencies. You have that anywhere in the world, but I
Mm.
think in general, Finland being more equal and people appreciating that. It's at least my image from the outside, right? Let's see how maybe that changes a lot when I move there, and maybe we'll have a recap of that a year down the line, 2 years down the line.
Interesting.
Let's
So
see.
very much egalitarian, very much the people are looked after by the government. Um, so it's very much a nature of how the nation is run. I'm actually very curious to see why, Finland or sort of maybe sort of Scandinavian nations overall, at least, top three in terms of that sort of the World Happiness Index. I hear that the whole maternity and paternity leaves are very generous.
Yeah, they for sure. I think in general they have very generous social policies. Um, but yeah, it's quite remarkable. I haven't, to be honest, I want to study that a little bit more, but I think it is remarkable. For example, Finland has been, I think, hasn't been, if you look back, like historically, it hasn't been like a super powerful country, sort of like in the past, right? Like
Mm.
it was always sort of like part of Sweden, part of Russia, and then sort of like got
Yeah, you
independent.
don't really hear about it,
But
so to speak.
yeah, and I think Finland in particular is interesting in the sense that if you go to like Copenhagen or Stockholm, you would see these amazing palaces from the past because these were really sort of like rich cities back then, right? Maybe the countryside wasn't so developed, but like you had a strong sort of like merchant culture, I think, in those cities, and they grew rich even in sort of like the medieval ages. In Finland, it didn't really. It was always sort of like on the edges, but it managed to sort of like really in the last 100 years have a remarkable sort of like story, like how it grew. And I think I'm not sure what's all at the bottom of that. I'm very interested in history, so maybe
Yeah, I think we need to
I
save it
study
for
that a little bit there.
podcast number two.